High on a plateau in southern Ohio, a giant serpent lies etched into the earth. Its body stretches over a quarter of a mile, curling and uncoiling across the ground. This is the Great Serpent Mound, the largest serpent effigy in the world, and one of North America's most intriguing and mysterious ancient monuments. For over 1,000 years, and possibly much longer, it's rested silently atop its ridge, gazing westward, watching the sun, begging the question, who built it and why? In 1846, two surveyors named Ephraim Squire and Edwin Davis traveled through the area to document the site. They carefully mapped the site, and their drawings were published in 1848 in a landmark study called Ancient Monuments of the Mississippi Valley. This publication introduced Serpent Mound to the wider world and sparked intense curiosity. Who could have built such a thing, and for what purpose? To the Americans and Europeans of the time, the mound's existence was puzzling. Some observers, influenced by biblical lore, suggested it might mark the location of the Garden of Eden or represent the serpent from Genesis. The great monument might have deteriorated if not for the efforts of an archaeologist named Frederick Ward Putnam in the 1880s. Putnam, from Harvard University's Peabody Museum, visited the site in 1885 and was alarmed to see that treasure hunters, vandals, and simple erosion were taking a toll on the ancient earthwork. Determined to save it, he raised funds to purchase the land. By 1887, the site was in the hands of the Peabody Museum, and Putnam began the first scientific excavations of Serpent Mound and its surroundings. For 3 summers, he dug into the serpent's earthen body and investigated nearby burial mounds. What he found, and didn't find, would shape the early understanding of the site. Inside the serpent effigy itself, Putnam found no human remains and surprisingly few artifacts. Unlike some burial mounds that hold skeletons or grave goods, the Serpent Mound seemed to be purely an effigy or ceremonial structure, not a tomb. However, in 2 conical mounds adjacent to the Great Serpent, Putnam uncovered burials and grave artifacts. These included stone tools, pottery fragments, and decorative objects like beads and carved tablets. The style of these artifacts pointed to the Adena culture, an ancient Native American culture that flourished in Ohio around 800 BC to 100 AD. Based on this context, Putnam concluded that the Adena people had built the Serpent Mound as well. He noted that one of the conical burial mounds near the serpent contained an Adena chief's remains, and he assumed the huge serpent effigy was part of the same complex. Putnam published his findings and even took steps to restore parts of the earthwork that had been damaged, essentially reshaping the serpent to what he believed was its original form. In 1900, the site was turned over to the state of Ohio to be preserved for future generations. In the late 20th century, archaeologists revisited Serpent Mound with new technology, particularly radiocarbon dating, to pin down its age. In the 1990s, a team tested charcoal samples recovered from within the serpent's coils. The results were surprising. 2 of the samples suggested a construction date around 1070 AD, roughly 900 years ago, long after the Adena period. This pointed instead to the Fort Ancient culture, a Native American society that lived in Ohio and neighboring regions between approximately 1000 to 1500 AD. The Fort Ancient people are known to have built villages and some earthworks in the area, and their culture was noted for frequent use of snake-based art. This sparked significant debate in the archaeological community. On one hand, the presence of Adena-era burials nearby, and some very early radiocarbon dates, hinted that the site might indeed have ancient origins in the Adena time. On the other hand, the strong evidence for a later construction and the thematic fit with Fort Ancient symbolism was compelling. Archaeologists and historians are attempting to reconcile this evidence. First, let's discuss the mainstream views, and then we'll move on to discussing ideas put forth by Graham Hancock. A growing view is that the Great Serpent Mound may have been a multi-stage project. It's possible that the Adena people were the first to consider this hilltop a sacred place. Then, many centuries later, the Fort Ancient culture could have renovated or expanded the effigy, giving it the form we see today. In this scenario, the serpent we now see might be essentially a Fort Ancient creation built atop an Adena foundation. Alternatively, the Fort Ancient people could have found the remnants of an Adena structure on that ridge and rebuilt it in their own style, effectively repurposing an ancient sacred site. While mainstream scholars continue to refine the timeline, they universally agree on one point: Serpent Mound was built by Native American societies. However, there are other varying interpretations which we'll come to in a moment. Mainstream archaeologists, as well as dissenting voices, all believe the mound likely had a ceremonial or cosmic significance. Across the eastern woodlands, indigenous traditions feature great serpents associated with water, the underworld, fertility, and transformation. It's quite plausible that the builders of Serpent Mound created it as a homage to a serpent spirit or deity important in their belief system. One clue to its purpose lies in its nearly precise alignment with celestial events. Modern surveys of the mound have confirmed that the serpent's head is aligned due west, toward the point on the horizon where the sun sets on the summer solstice. Notably, and keep this in mind because I'm going to come to it shortly, the snake's head is slightly misaligned with this celestial event. Imagine ancient people gathered on the solstice evening at the serpent's head, the sun descending directly into the snake's mouth, as if the serpent is consuming the fiery orb. That dramatic sight alone would appear to imbue the site with cosmic significance. Additionally, some researchers have noted that the serpent's coils and curves may align with other key points of the solar year. There are suggestions that certain bends correspond to the sunrise points of the spring and fall equinoxes, or the winter solstice sunrise. Given the mystery that still surrounds Serpent Mound, it's not surprising that a number of alternative theories have emerged over the years. One of the most prominent alternative theorists to address Serpent Mound is Graham Hancock, a best-selling author known for his countervailing views on prehistory and archaeology. Hancock's ideas propose that an advanced civilization existed during the last ice age, and that remnants of its knowledge are encoded in ancient sites around the world. In Hancock's view, Serpent Mound might be far older than archaeologists think, potentially dating back to around 10,000 BC, near the end of the Ice Age. This naturally begs the question, what evidence does he offer to support this theory? Hancock points to the astronomical alignment of the serpent's head with the solstice sunset. As noted earlier, in our time the alignment is close but not perfect. The sun at summer solstice sets just a bit off-center from the snake's mouth. However, Earth's axis wobbles slowly, a phenomenon called precession, causing the position of celestial events to shift slightly over long periods. According to Hancock, if you rewind the clock back about 12,000 years, the alignment of the setting solstice sun would have matched the Serpent Mound's orientation more exactly. He suggests that the current mound could be a reconstruction or legacy of a much older structure originally laid out when that alignment was spot on in the distant past. Notably, Hancock's theory isn't necessarily fully at odds with the broader theories of the Adena culture or the Fort Ancient people. Rather, he suggests that they were part of a longer lineage of custodians of the Holy Serpent site. The notion that Serpent Mound could date to 10,000 BC does, however, run into a major obstacle, at least at present. Every piece of hard evidence we've recovered from the site points to artifacts coming from the last couple thousand years. However, that's not to say that older evidence doesn't exist, and there's the possibility that hints of further evidence can be revealed through ground-penetrating radar. Further, mainstream archaeologists claim to counter Hancock's alignment theory as well. While they must accept that his timeline on the Earth's axis issue is correct, they have an explanation for this as well. The ancient builders of the Serpent Mound simply made a mistake in their construction of the head, causing the sun to set just slightly off-center. Notably, supporters of Hancock have countered that this is simply an assertion without evidence. Whatever your position, for now, the truth of the Great Serpent Mound remains one of the great mysteries of American prehistory. In the harsh expanse of the Colorado Desert in southeastern California, a set of giant figures lies etched into the earth, visible almost only from the sky. These are the Blythe intaglios, enormous geoglyphs near the town of Blythe, California, not far from the Colorado River on the border with Arizona. Intaglios are a form of rock-based art, generally practiced by pre-modern humans, often for unknown reasons. Modern awareness of these figures dates to 1932, when a pilot flying between Blythe and Las Vegas noticed unusual shapes on the desert surface. His discovery prompted a survey by the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles that same year. While local indigenous peoples likely knew of these sacred sites, non-native people had overlooked them for centuries due to their grand scale and ground-level obscurity. The intaglios are situated on two low desert mesas about 15 miles north of Blythe, just west of U.S. Highway 95. This remote location kept them hidden from outsiders until the age of aviation. The Blythe intaglios consist of 6 large figures arranged in 3 groups across the desert floor. In total, there are 3 human figures, 2 animal figures, and 1 spiral design. They were created by scraping aside the dark surface stones to reveal lighter sand and soil beneath, a method similar to that used for the much more famous Nazca lines in Peru. The removed stones were piled along the edges of the designs, and the exposed ground was compacted. This technique has helped the figures endure by inhibiting plant growth on the lines. The largest of the human figures is an awe-inspiring 170 feet long from head to toe. The smallest human figure is about 100 feet long. Each human is rendered in a simple form, a torso deeply dug into the earth with outstretched arms and legs that are more shallowly etched. The animal shapes are more abstract, with some observers thinking they resemble horses, though others interpret them as mountain lions. Keep this horse theory in mind as we go forward, because American prehistory buffs will know that horses vanished in the Americas long ago. One figure is a coiled spiral about 30 feet across, believed by some to represent a snake. Scattered around the intaglios are also geometric alignments in large circles. One circular clearing, roughly 140 feet in diameter, is believed to have been a dance area, perhaps used for ritual gatherings. These gigantic designs are virtually imperceptible from ground level, and to a person walking among them, they just seem like random patches of bare soil amid gravel. Much like the Nazca lines, it's only from high above that the intentional shapes emerge. The creation of these figures required coordination and effort, suggesting they held great meaning for their makers. Mystery surrounds the questions of who made the Blythe intaglios and why. Mainstream archaeologists haven't reached consensus on their exact age or function. No organic material was directly left in the designs to allow straightforward carbon dating, but some attempts to date them through indirect means have been made. Radiocarbon dating of nearby sediment and artifacts has yielded a broad range of dates from as early as 900 BC up to around 1200 AD. This suggests the intaglios could be as much as 2,000 to 3,000 years old, though their true age remains uncertain. Some scholars believe they were created by the ancestors of today's Mojave and Quechan tribes, who still inhabit the region. That said, they don't appear to have any oral histories related to claiming the Blythe intaglios as their own creations, putting this theory in question, though I'll come back to this shortly. Others have hypothesized much older dates. According to this claim, if the animal figures really depict horses, they might date back to the end of the last ice age when native wild horses roamed this region. However, others take the horse narrative and drastically swing the other way. They instead propose that the formations were made after the reintroduction of the animal to the region. It's believed that by the middle of the 16th century, horses had gradually been reintroduced to the region. Because no known texts or direct oral histories definitively explain the Blythe geoglyphs, researchers have proposed various theories about their purpose. Many believe these giant drawings had ceremonial or religious significance. The presence of the large circle or dance ring and other patterned alignments suggests gatherings or rituals took place on these sites. One line of thought is that the figures were intended as part of ceremonial processions or pilgrimages, for example, stops along a long ritual journey. Others believe that the figures represent events from the cosmology of the people in the region, and may be intended to be viewed by a spiritual personification of the sky, or a sky god. Thus, the reason why the figures don't appear to be anything on the ground is because they simply aren't meant to be viewed by humans, but rather by some form of divinity. Still others have proposed that the figures serve an astrological or astronomical purpose, though the meaning hasn't been meaningfully decoded. What all researchers and theorists can agree on is that these intaglios were not mere doodles or idle artwork. The labor required to produce figures of this scale indicates a deliberate intention, likely rooted in the spiritual or social life of the culture that made them. Although the true originators of the Blythe intaglios cannot be named with certainty, the native peoples of the region do have their own understanding of these giants on the ground. According to Mojave tradition, the human figures represent Mastamo, the creator of all life. In Mojave belief, Mastamo is a central figure who formed the Colorado River and taught the people how to live. The animal figures, in turn, are said to represent mountain lion siblings who assisted Mastamo in the creation of the world. These interpretations align with the idea that the geoglyphs depict characters from the tribe's creation stories, essentially marking the very landscape with the presence of their deities. Yet, interestingly, no tribe today claims human authorship of the Blythe intaglios. There's a sense that these figures have simply always been there, placed long ago by powerful forces or ancient people now forgotten. Hey everyone, it's Jimmy here, just reminding you to like, subscribe, and share this video with the history fans in your life. Also, don't forget to check out my other channels, Lazy Chill Zone and Lazy Chill True Crime, for way more content. In the rugged foothills of southeastern Oklahoma, a massive sandstone slab stands inscribed with mysterious symbols. This 12-foot-high rock, known as the Heavener Runestone, sits in the woods near the small town of Heavener. For over a century, it has intrigued locals and visitors, sparking legends of Viking explorers venturing deep into the American heartland. The runestone's 8 carved letters, weathered but still visible, have made historians and archaeologists puzzle over who carved them and when. According to legend, the stone's existence has been noted since the 1830s, when local Choctaw hunters supposedly found it. By the late 19th century, settlers had also noticed the strange markings, and worked under the belief that Native Americans made them. It remained obscure until the 1920s, when experts identified the writing as Norse runes. In 1923, the Smithsonian Institution confirmed the characters were runic, and soon after a local school teacher, Gloria Farley, began a lifelong investigation of the stone. Farley became convinced it was evidence of early European visitors in Oklahoma, and her advocacy helped get the site preserved as Heavener Runestone State Park in 1970. As for what the inscription actually says, the carving consists of 8 runic characters. Early investigators offered a translation of the runes as Gnomedal, generally interpreted to mean Gnome Valley. Later researchers confirmed that this interpretation was incorrect, and that it actually reads Glomedal, meaning Glome's Valley. This reading, widely accepted now, clarified the content of the message but not its age. Farley and other enthusiasts long maintained that the runestone is a genuine relic of Norse exploration, perhaps carved around the 10th to 11th centuries. They theorized that Scandinavian voyagers could have traveled up the Mississippi and Arkansas rivers and left this stone as a boundary marker in an unfamiliar land. Most mainstream scholars doubt that the Heavener runestone is truly ancient. Runic experts who've studied the inscription firsthand believe it was likely created in the 19th century. They point out that no archaeological evidence of a Viking or medieval European presence has ever been found in the region. They also claim that the rune forms on the stone don't match authentic medieval inscriptions. In their view, a late 1800s settler or traveler with knowledge of runes could have carved the inscription as an intentional hoax, or simply as a personal mark. Given this reasoning, historians generally regard the Heavener runestone as an intriguing curiosity rather than proof of pre-Columbian Europeans in Oklahoma. One of the most common ideas is that a Scandinavian immigrant in the late 19th century may have made the inscription. Notably, as with other cases such as the Kensington runestone, it's believed that many of these marks were made in an attempt to root these new Americans to their new home. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you'd love the one currently on your screen, so feel free to click and keep watching my content.